6010. Focus. Fantasy focus.
What's good, friends? Welcome into Fantasy Focus Football presented by Little Caesars. My name is Daniel Dopp, and I am alone in the studio right now. That's right. Field Yates and Mike Clay went to the Eagles-Giants game last night, hung out in New York City, had themselves a little bit of fun, which means I get to do the show alone here in Bristol. However, I am joined by one of my best friends, Elizabeth Loza, all the way from Los Angeles, California. Liz, it's so great to see your face. How you doing this morning?
I am great, Daniel. Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk about so many things ahead of the rest of week six's matchup.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Anytime it's a Liz Loza day, is it a great day here at Fantasy Focus? So we are always pumped for that. I really think a big part of it, Liz, is that he knew you were going to be on the show today. And obviously after the Eagles lost to the Giants and then finding out that the Phillies also lost to your Dodgers, maybe Mike Clay's just not going to show up to work again, ever again here at ESPN.
It was a tough day, especially the way that Phillies game ended for Philadelphia fans, for residents of the city. Not so much brotherly love, I'm assuming. But, you said my Dodgers. I am also, first and foremost, a Cubs fan.
Oh.
And they tied the series against the Brewers. I have been trying to manifest a Dodgers-Cubs NLCS championship so that maybe I can take in a game. Actually, little bit of my mom, who still lives in Chicago, and I decided that if the Cubs and the Dodgers do make it to the NLCS, we've got one more game to play, so we'll see.
Yes.
She's going to fly out. We're going to watch the game together, just the two of us, and she's going to bring a little vial of my grandpa's ashes, who actually, made us both Cubs fans. So I've got my fingers crossed for that. We'll see, though.
Oh, my gosh, Liz. All right, well, now I'm a Cubs fan. I think we're all interested in making sure that we get that matchup for you guys, because that would be unbelievable. We are a football show, however, so we're going to dive into a handful of football topics here today. We got a Thursday Night Football recap. We're going to do part 2 of our Week 6 preview, and then we got a little facts versus feelings. That's one of the things, obviously, Liz, that you do. If you subscribe to this podcast, you've probably seen facts versus feelings in our podcast feed, so we're going to blow it out, do a little bit more here on a Friday. And then, of course, our starts of the week. I have Field and Mike's starts of the week to be able to give you for later on as well, knowing that they're going to go up against us. So, Liz, let's dive right into it. First and foremost, before we do that, though, we want to give a shout out to our friends over at Trophy Smack. Head on over to TrophySmack.com. Use the promo code FOCUS10 to get 10% off your order over at Trophy Smack. And also, come hang out with us in the YouTube chat. We love the people that hang out with us during the live show in the YouTube chat. Maybe none more than our buddy Eric Moody. Follow him on social media at Eric N. Moody on Twitter and Blue Sky. And by the way, our buddy Eric Moody just signed a well-deserved contract extension here at ESPN. Shout out to you, buddy.
Love to see it.
So well-deserved. Awesome to have you here, and can't wait to continue to be your colleague for a number of years, hopefully, here at ESPN. So shout out to Eric for being able to make that happen. All right, Liz. Let's dive into a Thursday Night Football recap. Giants and Eagles. If I had to ask you for just like any takeaway, whichever takeaway Liz Loza wants to start with, what was the one thing that you left this game feeling like you learned?
I mean, there's a frat party in Manhattan now because Jackson Dart and Cam Scatto Boom are bringing big vibes to the Big Apple. This run game for the Giants is now completely lit up. I particularly want to talk about Scattaboo, though, because 19 carries, 98 yards, 3 rushing scores, also converted both of his targets through the air for 12 more through the air, 31 fantasy points. Incredible. I again, like, to me, this player is like Crash Bandicoot made in real life. I've never seen anything like it. There are some worries about his longevity in the league, but I'm playing redraft with him this year, so this is not my concern immediately. Also, in terms of what the Giants are doing, they rank 25th in completions to wide receivers and 9th in completions to running backs and tight ends. Gives you a good idea of what this offense is going to look like moving forward. Cam is doing the thing, right? He's cleared 20 fantasy points in 2 of his last 4 games. He's managed double-digit fantasy points every week since week 1. And with Tyrone Tracy back, he still was far and away the team's RB1. Tracy's return didn't affect him at all. Yeah, he's not particularly efficient, but when you've got volume and you are purposely careening into defenders just for the fun of it, I am appreciating the numbers and the viewer and the show, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is one of the most fun running backs to watch in the league, and that is one of the things that I don't know. You watch him as like this young rookie, and it's like the guy hasn't learned to avoid contact yet. He just wants to run through everybody like he did back at Arizona State, which. Give me all that. Like, I'm good on that. So I was trying to look it up to be able to see what we thought happened here with Tyrone Tracy and the snap percentage, because he didn't get nearly as much run this week as we saw with Cam Scattaboo. And so I'm just pulling it up right now so that I can tell you guys about it, because I believe that will be an important thing. But Tyrone Tracy working his way back, trying to figure out what this split is going to look like once they are both officially healthy. Tyrone Tracy played exactly 30% of the snaps. Cam Scattaboo played 70% of the snaps. So right now, it still looks like it's the Cam Scattaboo show with Tyrone Tracy going to be mixed in. We'll see how that one probably works out as Tyrone Tracy kind of ramps back up to full health, and we'll see how he gets more invested in this offense. However, if you got Cam Scattaboo, you are feeling really good right now. You're also feeling pretty good if you started Jackson Dart as a streaming option this week. We kind of wondered, like, there's one thing, Liz. There's one thing that makes us feel good about quarterbacks in fantasy football, and that's rushing ability. And that's the one thing that Jackson Dart has shown us in spades over the start of his young career. Yesterday even, you look at what he did on the ground. Another 13 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown. Also found the end zone with his arm. Had a total of 23.6 fantasy points. I don't think that we have gotten to the point where Jackson Dart should be considered a top 10 or even top 12 quarterback. He's kind of teetering on the back end of like that lower end range, maybe 12 to 15, because I want to see some consistency. But right now, he is one of my favorite bye-week fill-ins because of what he does with his legs. And if we see more consistency over the next couple of weeks, he may be one of those guys that jumps into that back end of that top quarterback tier that we often talk about being a starter for us on a weekly basis.
Yeah, just in terms of schedule, though, a little bit of an asterisk. Obviously, the matchup stiffens next week as the Giants are at Mile High, and that Broncos defense has been on fire, absolutely suffocating. So definitely a more difficult matchup for Dart and the Giants in Week 7. Also worth mentioning that they rematch at Philadelphia in Week 8, and, you know, these divisional games are always a little bit unpredictable. I have to imagine that the Eagles are going to come with a bit of more of a revenge factor in Week 8. So before we just completely anoint him, as I think you're trying to,
correct,
dissuade
avoid doing
people
that
from doing.
Yes.
Let's look at the schedule over the next 2 weeks. But if you have him as a stash, keep him there.
Absolutely. Feels great. You feel great right now if you got Jackson Dart and everything, especially with what he's been working with right now. No Malik Neighbors, and he's still able to do the things that he's been doing. So shout out to Jackson Dart. On the other side, let's talk about the Eagles really quickly, because my big takeaway, other than the fact that Dallas Goedert apparently is the best pass catcher in this group, which I don't even want to talk about, it's that we've seen Saquon Barkley just not look like 2024 Saquon Barkley.
Oh, who might have said that, Daniel?
The regression,
who might have predicted that could be a thing? And then got a bunch of comments about how I should not.
Bunch of hate for that.
Things.
You and I, Liz, I was totally with you because I had, and listen, it may not have worked out so far, but I had CMC and Ashton Genty over Saquon Barkley. He was my number 12 player overall coming into the season. Not number 12 running back, but number 12 player overall, which meant I probably wasn't going to draft him. I don't have Saquon anywhere, actually, in fantasy. In any of the 17 teams that I have, I do not have a single share of Saquon. And this week, unfortunately, it was a little bit more of the same when you look at it. 12 carries, 58 yards, and 2 catches for 9 yards, a total of 8.7 fantasy points. This is one of those things that when we talk about, and Mike talked about this at the beginning of the season, coming into the season in the beginning of the offseason when we were going through draft prep, historical regression is real for people that have just this significant amount of touches like Saquon Barkley did.
Nobody
and we're
wants to hear it, though.
I know, and
nobody
no one
wants
tells
to
us.
hear it.
No one tells us. None of that stuff. Like
no,
I don't.
We say it all the time. Over 480 total touches.
They don't want to hear it, Liz. They don't want to hear it.
They don't want to hear it.
So Saquon, I think we will still have some boom games from him, but I cannot believe against the Giants in his second revenge game against his former team that he put up just 8.7 fantasy points and only 58 rushing yards on the ground. I was shocked with that. Any other takeaways from the Eagles that you had, Liz?
It was gratifying to see AJ Brown get some of that squeaky wheel treatment.
Absolutely.
He finally, he didn't lead the team in targets. It was, as you mentioned, Dallas Goedert who did that, but still converted 6 of 9 for 80 yards. That's what we like to see. Next week, again, schedule a little bit difficult because they'll face Minnesota, but it's nice to see AJ Brown. I've talked about, you've talked about the boom bust nature of this season for him and how the Eagles tend to play much more conservatively when they're losing, or when they're winning rather. They were losing, and so that did help AJ Brown. I think we probably see more of that moving forward, and that was certainly a silver lining in this matchup.
Yeah. More losing for the Eagles moving forward. That's what you're predicting. That's what we see a lot of.
No. I'm saying more utilization
I like the call.
of AJ Brown.
Liz Loza thinks the Eagles lose a lot more games moving forward, guys. Let's put it.
I hope Mike Clay is not watching.
I hope he's not as well. All right. That's Thursday Night Football, Liz. Let's talk about our Week 6 preview. This, for us, for me, it is part 2. For you, it is part 1 because you weren't here yesterday. But if you are watching or listening at home and you did not check out yesterday with me and Field and Mike, go check that out. But Liz, I'm going to start with you. On a Friday, what we do is we just bring whatever topic to the table that we want to talk about, things that we think are interesting. So something that you are looking at here heading into Week 6. Your first preview takeaway is
the Chargers backfield and how to approach it. It is a question I keep getting on social, and my answer is please cue the Admiral Akbar meme because, girl, it's a trap.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. Do not try to figure this. This is an unknowable situation. You are not going to, if you are a Hampton investor, be able to replace his volume or production with either Hassan Haskins or Kamari Vidal. It's not going to happen. This could be a split. This could be a hot hand approach. There's no reason to believe that Gus Edwards won't get a call off the couch.
Yep.
I've heard rumors or read rumors that Alvin Kamara could be a trade target. Also, Nyheim Hines could be in the mix. He was just added to the practice squad and he spent the training camp with the team, so there's a familiarity there. We all know how Nyheim Hines can be a thorn in the side of RB1s and those fantasy investors, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how this is going to go. I'm comfortable admitting that I do not have a magic 8-ball that is going to solve this situation. I do think that if someone is really invested or motivated to find an answer here, then if you look at draft pedigree, experience, and the fact that Haskins played under Harbaugh at Michigan, then that might lean you one way. But overall, I would just say, well, everybody is focused on the question marks surrounding this backfield. Maybe try to take advantage of another backfield. Brian Robinson is maybe someone, if you're looking to add depth, is just an injury away from having a significant role.
Yeah.
Tyler Algier even has standalone value in fantasy right now, depending on formats. Ray Davis is another person. So everyone else is looking at Los Angeles. Maybe look elsewhere where there isn't as much competition if you're trying to add depth.
Yeah, it does feel like, and we talked about this a little earlier in the week, I would be shocked if they don't reach out to Gus Edwards or another running back and bring in a third body to be a part of this. And what goes from a 2-headed committee now for the next 4 weeks becomes a 3-headed committee that I probably would want that new guy that they bring into the mix, because if they really think that they need to add somebody, there's a reason for that. So the problem right now with the Chargers running backs and Hassan Haskins for me is that in Week 6, this would have been great if we had 6 teams on a bye, because then it would have felt like Haskins was probably like a low-end flex play just because of the lack of depth at the position. But this week, there's only 2 teams on bye, and it's the Texans, which is Nick Chubb and Woody Marks, and you likely weren't starting one of those guys if you could help it, and the Vikings, and it's Jordan Mason. So, the reason why we have them all the way down at running back 30, there's a lot of very obvious things that make a lot of sense until I see it in this offense with all the other guys basically available at our disposal to play in our lineups. He's just not going to – he's appropriately ranked because he's probably the 29th or 30th best starting running back in the NFL in Week 6, which is basically where we have him ranked. So I would rather stay away.
I do, though, just want to everybody who had Hampton, myself included, I have plenty of shares, shed a little tear, have a little moment of grief because this matchup against the Dolphins would have been delectable.
Would have been great.
So,
Yep. I mean, it's still possible. Liz, last week we had 3 backup running backs finish inside the top 8 at the position. Michael Carter, Rico
but we're
Dowdle.
telling people not to start anyone.
I know. I understand. I know. But I'm just saying, like, maybe all of a sudden we get surprised. However, I'm just more with you. I would rather fade him. I have him outside my top 25, closer to running back 28 right now. So I am in line with you with how we are viewing Haskins. I would love to talk about your team. Do you mind? The Bears and the
go right
Commanders.
ahead.
Liz Loza, 2 sophomore quarterbacks, 2 early round draft picks, Caleb and
1
Jayden.
and 2, baby.
Going back and forth with each other. Come on, you know how pumped I am for this game? I'm only going to talk about the quarterbacks. I'm going to save the pass catchers for a little bit later. I'll dive into them as well. But how do we not talk about Caleb versus Jayden? Caleb Williams averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. 3 top 10 finishes this year. In 5 games, he's finished as a top 10 fantasy quarterback 3 times. One of them was a top 3 finish as well. He's got 2 or more touchdowns in 3 of his 4 games. Commanders have given up the 9th most fantasy points, and they haven't even, honestly, 9th most fantasy points, Liz Loza. And here's who they have played. Justin Herbert, he's okay. He's pretty good at football. Jordan Love, I guess he's fine, right? Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, and Michael Penix. There's not a single quarterback that's a top 12 fantasy quarterback in that mix right now, and the Commanders have given up the 9th most fantasy points in spite of playing those guys. Because of that, with the matchup and all the things that your Bears, I think, are going to do coming out of a bye week where they add even more to their offense, get a little even more acclimated to the Ben Johnson system, I've got Caleb Williams as a top 8 quarterback this week. I'll talk about Jayden Daniels in a minute, but anything that you want to add on Caleb?
So I was surprised to see Washington bring pressure so effectively to the Chargers. The Washington's defense bring pressure so effectively. I mean, they sacked Justin Herbert 5 times. Caveat, there's always one of those, being that I believe there were 3 backups starting on the Chargers offensive line. So the matchup, was a little bit easier for the Commanders. They had been, there were some questions about their ability to generate that pressure. So here's my concern. Coming out of a bye is a good point. So hopefully the Bears offensive line a little bit healthier. Still, there's reshuffling going on in that line. And we know that Caleb is at his worst when he doesn't have time. He likes to hold on to that ball too long. He makes flighty decisions. He scrambles too much. So I'm a little bit worried after the Commanders found something with their D-line that they might move that momentum forward against the Bears and completely short circuit Williams, which we've seen. Now, that might be the Bears fan inside of me, but we know that if Caleb is scrambling, as he has been doing, he's actually averaged 3 scrambles per game, which is the QB 10, compared to 2 designed runs per game, which is QB 9 for that stat. I do think he'll pick up the rushing yards. I think the best thing about this matchup, and I know you're going to talk about it more later, so I don't want to get too much into it, is the Odunze factor, because Marshawn Lattimore has been booty cheeks, really, for much of the season. So I think that is going between some of the scrambles and finding his alpha downfield effectively. Caleb could put up QB 10 fantasy numbers, but I'm a little more nervous than you.
Oh, okay. All right. I will chalk that up to the Bears fan inside of you having this just like a little bit of trepidation, because when I look at Caleb, I think he's looked good. And I think that you still think he's a top 10 quarterback, though? Of course not as good as Jayden. Liz, Jayden Daniels I have as QB1. Let's talk about Jayden really quickly. At least 17 fantasy points.
Can we just also, just for a minute,
please,
let me say this, that the Bears could have drafted Jayden Daniels and chose instead to draft Caleb Williams. I'm not editorializing that. That's just like a fact that I want to.
Correct. Yes. Do you have any feelings about that fact, Liz Loza, that you could have drafted?
For this show.
All right. Then let's talk about Jayden Daniels. At least 17 fantasy points in every game he has played this season, which has been a really nice floor. Missed a couple of games. So that's why I say every game he's played this season. It hasn't been 5 games. Obviously, Marcus Mariota has been out there a little bit while Jayden has been dealing with some injury stuff. But he is first amongst quarterbacks in rush attempts per game. And he is basically tied. He's 4th in fantasy points per game, basically tied for 2nd, within a point with that. And when you look at the Chicago Bears, Liz, they have allowed the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks so far this year. And here are the quarterbacks that you have faced. They have not been mobile. J.J. McCarthy, Jared Goff, Geno Smith, and Dak Prescott. That is not a good run of quarterbacks that utilize their legs. So it's going to be a really big test for the Bears defense to try to shut down Jayden Daniels here coming in this week. Like I said, I've got him as QB1. I'm just pumped to watch both these guys go back and forth, hopefully in a shootout in week 6.
I think a shootout is certainly what Vegas is at least expecting. Right now, ESPN bet has the over-under set at 50.5. Chicago
Ooh, like that.
are 4.5-point underdogs. So, yes, I agree with you. I think there should be a lot of back and forth. Obviously, the battle between the top 2 quarterbacks drafted in the NFL draft, not in fantasy drafts, from a year ago is a wonderful narrative to lean into. Jayden Daniels, I think, is both of our QB1s heading into the week. So it should be an interesting game, and we get to see it on primetime, which is even better.
I want to watch Caleb Williams take another step. Just coming out of, like, he does play a little wild. You talked about all the things. I co-sign on all the things that you said, so I don't need to say it again. But I want to see him just put together more games like we saw recently, right? Like a lot of those big games, multi-touchdown games, finding ways to be able to like lose that narrative that so many people have around him, because I really like Caleb Williams and the skill set he brings to the table, even though I'm a Lions fan. All right, Liz, your next takeaway heading into week 6. Give it to us.
I think Baker Mayfield has spoiled us. The man
in what way?
Doing the impossible. He's doing the impossible every single week. He's been a top 12 fantasy producer at the position in 4 of 5 games.
Yep.
And when you think about the obstacles that have been surrounding him, that's really impressive. He ranks first at the position in deep ball attempts, and not surprisingly, third at the position in passing scores. That's a regular trend. He's managed multiple touchdown passes in 9 of his last 10 regular season games. Moreover, 6 of his 10 passing scores have gone for 20 or more yards. The question, though, is this sustainable? I mean, Chris Godwin is now banged up. We're going to talk about that. Obviously, Mike Evans is not in the lineup. Ibuka has been a revelation. What an incredible find. His chemistry with Mayfield, his ability to translate his route polish from college immediately to the pros has been a glory to watch. The offensive line, his protection is obviously getting better for Baker Mayfield. But still, it feels like he is David fighting Goliaths every single week. And I'm going to continue to believe, I don't know after week 6, I'm not going to project that far, but I do think it's sustainable for him to manage in week 6.
Yep.
Because of the matchup. You look at the 49ers and you think, oh my gosh, it's a good defense. But without Nick Bosa, they have been much more generous over the past 2 weeks. We saw what Matt Stafford did despite losing the game last week. So I think for week 6, I'm going to hang on to Mayfield as a top 10 potential producer.
I love that. And he has been absolutely fantastic. The 49ers are super banged up, not just on defense, but on the offensive side of the ball too.
Yep.
I'll dive into that a little bit later on in the show. But like what Baker has been able to do without the consistent grouping of pass catchers that we have talked about, because we know he's got 3 really good wide receivers in Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Emeka Ibuka, but he hasn't had all 3 of them so far this year. And still, the idea that one of them that he's having this chemistry with is a rookie that he's just basically got one offseason with, and he's able to still do all of these things with Emeka Ibuka. It has been unbelievable. If you drafted him or found a way to get him on your squad, Liz, I am totally with you. He has been unbelievable this year. Looks like one of the league winners based on where you drafted him, based on value. The big question that we're going to have is, Baker is spoiling us right now with how well he's playing in fantasy football. Is Baker going to continue to spoil Emeka Ibuka once Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are fully healthy? Because that's what we're going to be wondering, right? Like, if I knew that we're going to see like a downturn in targets, I might be thinking to myself, is this like as big of a sell high as you're going to get on Emeka Ibuka? I can't imagine trying to sell Emeka right now, though. With how well he's been playing, it would feel like I'm prognosticating some big downfall that I don't actually think is going to happen. I just think he's good enough
And
that
I agree with you. When I also look at the ages and injury histories of Godwin and Evans,
absolutely,
I just feel like the ceiling for Ibuka and what he's been doing and the connection that he has since been, because of his success, building with Baker, that maybe there's a slight dip, but also the ceiling is so high and the value, to your earlier point, has been so great that I'm not interested in losing him from my squad unless I have a really, really awful losing record and am in a position where I need to shake things up.
Yes, 100%. Or a crazy, enticing offer for some reason that I can't imagine someone would send to me, but I'm with you on that. All right, let's talk about some more wide receivers then, if you're okay with that, because I want to come back to this Commanders and Bears game, because it used to be Terry McLaurin versus DJ Moore, but right now it's Odunze versus Deebo Samuel within these offenses. And I want to talk about just a little bit how both of these, or I guess all four of these wide receivers stack up. Rome's wide receiver 4 in fantasy points per game. Liz, wide receiver 4. That's amazing. Deebo is wide receiver 8. For what it's worth, both have been super heavy in the touchdown department. Odunze has 5 touchdowns in 4 games. That's an unsustainable rate. I would love for it to continue for us in fantasy, but it's an unsustainable rate. That is going to come back to earth a little bit. Deebo has 3 touchdowns in 5 games, but both of them are top 15 in target share and game played, so they're getting good volume within their own offenses. Meanwhile, I want to look at the other side of this. DJ Moore, outside the top 35 in receptions, outside the top 40 in receiving yards, and he's wide receiver 48 in targets per game. He has between 4 and 6 targets and 3 and 5 catches in every game this year. He's not a high volume guy, not a high catch guy. He's just sort of like this average middle of the pack wide receiver that's probably one of the better wide receiver 2s in the NFL, but he's not getting the kind of volume that really propel him to kind of showcase all of the things that he can do. So with that, it's really tough because I still think some boom weeks are going to be on tap here for DJ Moore. But we've just fully, and I think we've already talked about this, and I think coming out of a bye, we're going to see it even more. Odunze has just cemented himself as the wide receiver 1 of this Chicago Bears offense. DJ Moore is number 2. And then number 3, we're still waiting to see if one of these other guys really establishes themselves as the number 3 pass catcher, whether that is Colson Loveland coming out of bye where we need a tight end. Maybe Luther Burden gets a little bit more involved. Honestly, it's been Olamide Zaccheaus. And that's not someone that I want to use in fantasy football, Liz. I'd rather have one of the other guys. But all that to say, DJ Moore, like firmly the wide receiver 2 in Chicago now. And I have him at a point where I consider whether or not he's even a flex play for me on these weeks where there's not a lot of teams on bye.
I agree with you. I wonder if DJ Moore isn't going to be a trade target for another NFL franchise.
Ooh.
They're obviously, like, Field is much better at this than me. He understands the money and the contracts and all of this. I understand money pretty well, but I'm not going to get into the I'm not going to get into the minutia of DJ Moore's deal, particularly on this show. But I wonder if he's a trade target for another NFL franchise that might be in a bind. I think you've said everything. Also, Rome is averaging over 8 looks per game. He's currently, understanding, of course, the team was on bye last week, the wide receiver 23 in total targets this season. Alpha's going to alpha. He's the number 1. And, you know, it was interesting coming into this season because there were all these questions when a lot of us, myself included, kind of made the prognostication that Rome was going to take the leap this season. And the rebuttal to that was that there were too many mouths to feed. Indeed, and it looks like that argument has negatively affected Moore, not Rome.
Yeah, and we don't even feel like there's too many mouths to feed in this offense right now. Luther Burden is not like a consistent and substantial part of this offense. Colson Loveland, not a consistent and substantial part of this offense. It's actually been a little bit more targeted than I thought it was going to be to start the season. On the other side, Terry McLaurin, and I will just mention this, did not practice on Thursday, has a quad injury, hasn't practiced since week 3. And a reminder to everybody, this is a Monday Night Football game. So if you are going to go in with the idea that maybe I want to play Terry McLaurin, you need to have contingency plans within Monday Night Football. Otherwise, you need to make plans on Sunday to have somebody potentially replace him if you don't think that McLaurin is going to go. But after not practicing on Thursday and having not practiced for a couple weeks, it does not feel great. Right now, it just feels like Terry McLaurin has lost a lot of the touchdown love, Liz. Like I talked about the regression with Saquon Barkley. One of the other things that we talked about that was very evident to a lot of us was touchdown regression for Terry McLaurin because he was just playing a little over his head in the touchdown department when you look at what the expectation would be. So he kind of came back to earth a little bit, but he's been banged up, which has really allowed Deebo just to kind of step in and solidify himself as the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. When McLaurin is back and fully healthy, do you think that you will still be ranking Deebo, at least in the beginning, ahead of Terry McLaurin because of what he looks to be as a pass catcher in this Commanders offense?
I think, and this is when you need to look at real life football as a part of your decision-making process in fantasy. It depends on the Commander's record. If it is working with Deebo,
Fair.
then they're not going to change it. And if it isn't, then there will be more room for tweaking, I have to imagine. I do think health, more than Terry McLaurin playing over his head, it has been the issue for McLaurin. Now, I will say, you mentioned that he didn't practice, right? Like, I took him out of my rankings. I have taken him out of my lineups in fantasy as well. I'm going to assume he's not going to play. And that has allowed Deebo, who looks vintage, by the way, the opportunity to cement that role and to gather chemistry, gain chemistry and rapport with Jayden Daniels. So I think you're right. I do imagine there would be a slight regression in volume for Deebo, but he does have that wide back appeal. So I'm not quite sure it's going to be too significant. I am hopeful that McLaurin will remain at least a flex option, particularly with injuries, other injuries mounting, and bye weeks coming to this part of the schedule.
I will say they're playing very different roles in this offense. Deebo, out of 79 wide receivers, Deebo is 73rd in air yards per target this year with 6.9 air yards per target. Terry McLaurin, out of 79 wide receivers, he's not 73rd. He is, in fact, 8th in air yards per target, 14.1. So less efficient when he is even out there on the field because they're taking more deep shots to him. Deebo, like you just said, classic Deebo, doing a lot of his damage at or near the line of scrimmage as a short yardage target for his quarterback. All right, Liz, give me another takeaway here heading into week 6.
Well, I'm looking at this Green Bay Packers matchup, versus Cincinnati.
Yep.
It's obviously a delectable matchup for fantasy, exploitable. And I would really like to see Matthew Golden finally break out. That, I think, is more optimism, because I think that Romeo Doubs will continue to lead this receiving core as he has done. He's got 8 deep targets so far this season. No other Packer has more than 5. He's had multiple deep targets in 3 of his last 4. He had 7 catches and 1 touchdown prior to that 6-catch, 3-touchdown game versus Dallas. So, this is the frustrating part of LaFleur's offense. That said, Matthew Golden has so much potential. He's a versatile player. You can utilize him all over the field. He's mostly played outside, though. When I look at the number of catches and the player's ADOT, though, this is where the frustrating part of this offense comes into play, because Dobbs has 13 catches and an ADOT of basically 14. Golden, 11 catches and a 14-yard ADOT. Dontavian Wicks, 10 catches and a 14-yard ADOT. So it's maddening. That said, I mentioned, right, that I had Terry McLaurin in a couple of my fantasy rosters on a couple of my teams. I am subbing out McLaurin because I don't think he'll play, and instead rolling with Matthew Golden. So because of this matchup, even if he doesn't lead the Packers in targets, in catches, I think there might be enough juice to squeeze here that makes him a viable flex option.
That's what we've been waiting for, right? With Matthew Golden. I always think about our buddy Tristan H. Cockcroft when I used to produce the Fantasy Baseball podcast. He would always talk about
the Sultan of Stat.
The Sultan of Stat, absolutely. And he would always talk about, is the juice worth the squeeze when you're trying to find a guy? Like, is there enough in there that you think you're going to get something out of it? And right now with Matthew Golden, I'd love to feel like that's the case. I think we all would, because we probably over-invested in this Packers wide receiver, thinking that the Packers weren't going to do the same thing to us that they've done in recent years, which is just not have a number 1 wide receiver. They just have 3 number 2 wide receivers on their team, and they just rotate. It's like they have that cup with the hidden ball game, and you never know which one is going to be the one, and they just keep moving around every week, and you never know. Like, we drafted Matthew Golden to be the wide receiver 1 here, Liz.
And I do think that theory was sound, that strategy was sound, because of where he was drafted in the NFL, like at his draft pedigree via the NFL. Like, we hadn't seen the Packers make a move like that so early at the position. And so it did seem as though there was like really optimism and like logic behind the optimism. Again, though, when you're talking about the matchup, I think there's going to be enough. Cincinnati has allowed 16 or more fantasy points to a wide receiver in 4 of 5 weeks. Could that be Dobbs? Sure, but could that be Golden? Sure. So I think you have to play the odds a little bit here.
Dude, it's so frustrating. I would love it. I would love it, Liz. I hope this happens. Please speak it into existence. Let's make Matthew Golden a thing here in week 6. This Packers team still has so many guys. I know Jayden Reed is on IR right now. He's still got Romeo Dobbs. He's still got Dontavian Weeks. They just paid a bunch of money to Christian Watson to come back and be a part of their receiving core. They still got Matthew Golden and both of the tight ends. This is one of those teams that just has like a boatload of pass catchers, and we're trying to figure out, can Matthew Golden separate himself? That's really the question that we're asking. When can Matthew Golden separate himself from the rest of these guys? All right. I got a big
he can
injury.
separate really, really well, actually.
He does.
To that
He
point,
separates great.
He is.
Yes.
He's the wide receiver 3 in target separation. So if we're looking at separation, Golden should have that nailed.
That's it. That's it. All right. I'm going to give you guys a quick injury update. And by quick, I mean I'm going to go as fast as I can. But there are a ton of people on the injury practice report this week. So I'm going to fly through it. Liz, the way that I do this with Mike and Field is if you want to stop me to talk about any of these injuries or what it means for someone related to that injury, just jump in and interrupt me. And then we'll stop. We'll talk about whatever you want. Otherwise, I'm going to just rip through a bunch of stuff here because there are unfortunately a lot of names this week. Lamar Jackson did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday on teams where I have Lamar Jackson. I am making other plans just to be safe. It sounds like we should be planning on him not going. Not official, going to wait for Friday, but I would make other plans if you have Lamar Jackson. Kyler Murray did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday with a foot injury. Friday practice is huge right now. If he doesn't go, Jacoby Brissett is the backup there. In case you did not remember, we would see more Jacoby Brissett. Right now, I have Kyler Murray as quarterback 18 here in week 6. Brock Purdy did not practice Wednesday or Thursday as well. Going to continue to wait to see what happens with him and this toe injury. Ideally, we get Brock Purdy back, but we're going to continue to wait and see. He is one of a number of different 49ers that is hurt as well, but those are the top 3 quarterbacks that you need to be aware of. A reminder, if you need a streamer so far, our favorite streamer this week, Matthew Stafford at the quarterback position, taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Everyone at ESPN Fantasy basically has him as a top 5 option because of what the Ravens have done with opposing quarterbacks. And the spoiler alert there is they've given up a ton of fantasy points. Running back position, Bucky. Unfortunately, Bucky Irving, we expect him to be out. Did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. It looks like it's going to be another game of Rashad White, so you should plan on having Rashad White, not Bucky Irving again this week. Chuba Hubbard did not practice Wednesday or Thursday as well with a calf injury. He did not practice and has not practiced for 5 straight practices. If Rico Dowdle is the guy that goes, and again, Friday is going to be very important to see what happens here, he would rank somewhere in the 20 to 25 range for me if there is no Chuba Hubbard. CeeDee Lamb did not practice Wednesday and Thursday with his ankle injury. Sounds like Dallas is saying that he has a chance to go, but it seems unlikely, which means we're probably going to see more George Pickens and Jake Ferguson like we have. Liz, is there a third pass catcher? Do you think there's going to be another Ryan Flournoy week here with the Dallas Cowboys if we don't see CeeDee Lamb? Or you're just going to say, like, you know
perhaps.
what? Okay.
It's Jake Ferguson.
Just Jake Ferguson week. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Jake Ferguson and George Pickens, those are the 2. Terry McLaurin, I already mentioned. Quad injury, did not practice on Thursday. Hasn't practiced since week 3, and because it's Monday Night Football, you should make plans accordingly. Xavier Worthy went from a full practice on Wednesday to not practicing on Thursday. It sounds like that could just be a day of rest with him kind of ramping back up with some of the injury stuff that he had. But monitor it just in case, because he is dealing with an ankle injury, just in case that does get worse, something to be aware of. But it sounds like things are going to be okay there. Mike Evans did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. He is doubtful with a hamstring injury. We should expect not to be with him. Chris Godwin did not practice Wednesday or Thursday either, has a fibula issue right now. So that is going to be something to continue to monitor as well. Friday practice will be very big. If no Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, how high is too high for Emeka Egbuka? We already have him. It feels like as high as we can get him in our wide receiver rankings this week.
I agree. I mean, this is kind of why I wanted to talk about Baker Mayfield and the potential matchup. He can just do all of the things. I don't really want to bet on a Sterling Shepard game, but
I agree
I'm hopeful
with you.
that Godwin can get on the field.
Yes, we're going to hope that happens here. A couple more here. For 49ers, Juwan Jennings did not practice Wednesday, but was limited on Thursday. You love that. Sounds like a little bit of positive news, at least trending in the right direction with that ankle injury. Friday's going to be important here to see if Juwan Jennings can go because it has been a couple of weeks. Ricky Pearsall did not practice Wednesday and Thursday, dealing with a knee injury. He has worked on the sideline with the teams, and the team is not giving up hopes that he would be able to play this week, but it doesn't sound promising. And we have Ricky Pearsall zeroed out in our projections here at ESPN Fantasy. And I am making plans to go another direction rather than trusting Ricky Pearsall this week. If something happens or that changes, check out Fantasy Football Now on Sunday morning, where we have the latest injury updates for you there. 3 more. Wow, this is just a lot of names. Darnell Mooney did not practice on Thursday with a hamstring injury. I mentioned that because that would be a boost to Kyle Pitts managers. We're looking for tight ends forever and always right now in fantasy football. And so if Darnell Mooney does not go, that would be great for Kyle Pitts. Speaking of tight ends, Brock Bowers did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday with a knee injury, continuing to wait and see what happens there. Michael Mayer has cleared the concussion protocol, so if Brock Bowers doesn't go, feels like you could have a backup there on the Raiders squad. But again, with where we drafted Brock Bowers, he is someone that we would love to have in our fantasy lineups here in week 6, so we will continue to monitor that. Needs to practice here on Friday. The other one, Darren Waller, didn't practice on Wednesday, was limited on Thursday with a hip, but you always like the midweek upgrade over the midweek downgrade. So I'm going to chalk this up to a 33-year-old that was retired and is ramping his way back up into things. Like, he's probably going to take it easy, and his team's going to take it easy on him in practice throughout the week. So I don't have any worries about Darren Waller unless we see a downgrade in practice on Friday. That was a bunch of people, Liz Loza. So that was the injury rip here for week 6. Unfortunately, if you have any of those guys, just make sure that you have contingency plans. And other than that, Liz, that's going to do it for me as far as my week 6 preview part 2 takeaways. Do you have anything else you want to mention before we dive into facts versus feelings?
I think we can dive right into facts versus feelings.
Let's
keep
do it
things
then.
rolling.
All right, let's go. I'm going to hand the show over to you. Liz, you host your own show. So let's pretend like our roles are reversed right now. You're the host and I'm the guest, and I'll just let you take over here. Liz Loza, I'm on Facts versus Feelings. Thank you for inviting me. Congratulations to Daniel. This is so much fun. What do you want to talk about today?
Well, you've actually been a guest on Facts versus Feelings.
Yes.
So we've welcomed you back. Thank you so much for returning. You talked about Matthew Stafford, and perhaps given the injuries to Kyler and Lamar, there needing to be a streaming option. Streaming is certainly alive and well in the year 2025, and Matt Stafford has been an excellent replacement. He has cleared 25 fantasy points in back-to-back games. He's passed for over 375 yards in back-to-back games. I mean, this is what happens when a defense changes over and the offense adds 2-star complementary receivers. Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua are working in gorgeous harmony, productively gorgeous harmony. Puka is currently, fantasy's wide receiver 1. That's pretty good. Meanwhile, Devontae Adams is fantasy's wide receiver 15 overall. They are both inside the top 15 in terms of receiving yards, which is obviously translatable to Matthew Stafford's passing acumen and production. The Ravens, you mentioned the matchup. Fantastic. Not fantastic for the Ravens, not fantastic for Baltimore, but fantastic for the opposing offenses. They have allowed the second most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. 3 different quarterbacks have gone over 27 fantasy points when facing Baltimore. So yes, Matthew Stafford is offering managers QB5 potential in week 6.
I love it. And it's not just Matthew Stafford, obviously, because you mentioned the 2 pass catchers, but I was saying this to Mike and Field yesterday. I don't know the last time that we have had 2 pass catchers from the same team both show up as top 5 receiving options. And not like a wide receiver and a tight end, but like 2 wide receivers that we have ranked inside the top 5, and we think it is going to be a smash week, not just for Matthew Stafford, but for the guys that he's able to chuck the ball to in Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. Smash spot for everybody right now in Los Angeles. It honestly feels just like a good vibes weekend in LA right now, Liz. That's kind of what it feels like.
Ooh, I mean, between the Dodgers and, the Rams did lose, but I think that's going to help them in week 6, actually coming off of that rivalry loss, an upset against they were upset by the 49ers. So Yes, good times in LA. Hopefully, week 6.
Hopefully,
and,
that's
the
right.
Dodgers aren't hurting.
That's right.
anybody
Yeah.
either.
From Thursday on forward, we're not looking in the past, Liz. We're looking forward. That's right. So that's what it's all about. I love
That's what
the call.
we do in fantasy.
That's right. That's right. I love Matthew Stafford this week. I think it's a great call. And we expect big things from that Rams offense. Give me your second player from Facts versus Feelings, Liz Loza.
A little bit of a tone shift here. I want to talk about Tony Pollard because nobody really does, and nobody really does discuss him because he's kind of boring. But that doesn't mean that he's not invaluable. He's continued to deliver steady RB2 value. He's managed 17 or more touches in every game, and he still recorded 17 touches last week when Tajay Spears returned to action. He's also caught 3 balls in back-to-back weeks. Last week, he posted a season high 14.8 fantasy points. I like this matchup for him. The Raiders have allowed 7 rushing touchdowns over their last 3 contests.
Yeah.
And however, this is great. Week 7 should be great. But after week 7, I am wondering if it wouldn't be a sell high opportunity for managers who are looking to make a change, because as Tajay Spears becomes more folded into this offense, I don't think the volume is sustainable for Pollard. So if you drafted him based on the value you thought he could provide, congratulations, you're getting that as an RB2. But I'm a little bit wary after week 7 of whether or not he can continue to keep this up.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tajay Spears. Tajay Spears limited in practice both Wednesday and Thursday, so we'll see how that works out on Friday. If we do, obviously, I like this backfield more if Tajay Spears is not a part of it. From a football perspective, it's better to have a second running back there, I think, to be able to help, spell Tony Pollard and help the Titans and do all the NFL stuff. But for us, yes, I would love to be able to see just specifically Tony Pollard here. I think what you called him, Liz, while not a shot, because it's not, but Tony Pollard is boring. I think that is unfortunately, the perfect representation of him as a running back in fantasy football right now. Not on a great team, right? That team doesn't have a lot of offensive explosion. We've been waiting for things to happen. We love Tony Pollard as a prospect and all the things that he can do, but he's sort of in this middling offense where it's there's only so much. So I'm holding on to patience because he's a starting running back in the NFL. That's the big thing about Tony Pollard. If you've got a guy that's touching the football as a starting running back, you've got to be grateful that you even have someone like that on your squad. So,
well, from a roster management point of view, though, boring can bring balance, and every roster needs that. So that's kind of why I wanted to highlight them. You can't always have a Cam Scattaboo, right? You need to find those floor players and balance them with your upside guys.
I like it. And your floor player this week is, I was trying to think. I was just looking at the third name that you have here. I was trying to think of who your floor player was. Yeah, that's not really it. All right. So love that call on Tony Pollard. Give us your third player here from Facts versus Feelings.
Well, I like to think that I'm a little bit of a tight end whisperer. I'm no Sale, right? Like that. I'm no Uncle Sale.
I call you a savant more than anything. I think you're a tight end savant, Liz.
I do enjoy peach season.
Yes, that's fair.
Can we just leave it there?
Yes.
I do like the rock fruits. And so I like to stream at this tight end position because I find the landscape absolutely maddening, and I'd rather just release myself from the Brock Bowers on the injury report and the why is Darren Waller back from retirement and looking absolutely vintage. I don't want to deal with it. So I'd rather just throw my darts at this position. And this week, AJ Barner has my attention. He's been the tight end 2 overall over the last 2 weeks. He is fast becoming an integral part of the Seattle offense. Yes, he's been dominating as an inline blocker, recording 79% of snaps, but he also ranks 3rd on the team in terms of routes run, behind only JSN and Cooper Kupp, and also well ahead of number 3 receiver Torrey Horton. His 4 receiving touchdowns on the season are tied for first at the position with Dallas Goedert. Obviously, Goddard scored last night, and so that'll shift in week 6. But heading into week 6, his 4 touchdowns were tied for first at the position with Goddard. Also tied for 5th in the NFL behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, George Pickens, Rome Odunze, our guy, and Emeka Egbuka. So he has some real end zone appeal. Maybe people will be like, well, you're chasing touchdowns. Cool. Name a tight end that you're streaming in which you aren't doing exactly that. This is part of the game here. I think he figures to be very involved still in this matchup.
Yeah.
In this matchup, there's a spread of just 1.5 points and an over/under of 47.5 at Jacksonville. And Jacksonville has been middle of the pack against the tight end position, but they have allowed touchdowns. Again, that's your asterisk in back-to-back games, one to Kelsey and one to Jake Tungis. So if you're looking for a stream, AJ Barner rostered in just 8% of ESPN fantasy leagues.
AJ Barner and Dallas Goedert leading the
ya?
tight end
Did I sell
position
ya?
in touchdowns heading into week 6 is why
Yeah.
I don't know why I still play this stupid game that we play. What are we doing to ourselves? Why do we do this every single year? I feel like every year I get stopped by people and they're like, Daniel, does it feel like this is like one of the weirdest years in fantasy football ever? And it's just like every year something comes up. There's always something that makes us ask the question, like, are more players getting hurt? Is this happening more often than not? Tight end position looks like it's just a wasteland right now with all the things. And we've got Dallas Goedert and AJ Barner leading the position in touchdowns. So infuriating. All right. That was a great segment, Liz Loza. Make sure you check out Facts versus Feelings every single week. That it appears if you are listening to this podcast, it is in the same exact podcast feed that you're listening to right now. If you're watching on the YouTube, you can also find Liz Loza on the YouTubes as well. So check it out there. Liz, did you bring a start of the week with you?
I did bring a start of the week. Can you remind everyone of the parameters for these choices, though?
I can,
because
absolutely.
I am new to them, and so I made my picks based on what I was told I could pick within.
I believe that Field and Mike also have starts of the week. We'll find out. I think we got some full screens for them. All right. So
Okay.
starts of the week. You got to pick a quarterback outside the top 10, a running back outside the top 20, a wide receiver outside the top 30, and a tight end outside the top 10 as well, Liz Loza. Would you like me to go first so that you can see how it is done, or do you want to show me how it is done?
No, I am a guest in your home. I don't like to be sloppy when I am a guest in someone's home. So you go ahead first.
I'll show you mine. You show me yours second. So we'll start with Justin Fields. Quarterback. I believe in the rushing, guys. I just believe in the rushing. Taking on the Denver Broncos. He has been unbelievable utilizing his legs this year. And I talked about it on this last, I think it was yesterday with Mike and Field when we looked at the rushing. Denver's been really good. They've allowed 15 rushing yards to quarterbacks so far this year. 15. That's not a mistake. There's no asterisk next to it. Just 15 yards to 5 quarterbacks on the ground through the first 5 games of the season. Now they face potentially the best rushing or one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL. I am going to default to Justin Fields. I have him ranked as a top 10 quarterback, so I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. David Montgomery is going to be my running back. Monty is going to be the tip of the spear at Arrowhead Sunday night, for these Detroit Lions. I think they're going to continue to try and get back to the game that they want to play, which is play action, setting up the run, doing the things they want with David Montgomery. I'm looking for a safe floor from that running back. Wide receiver, great matchup. It's just too good. Whenever you play the Las Vegas Raiders and you've been struggling recently, then you're like, you know what? I got to go with this guy, Calvin Ridley. He's a top 30 wide receiver for me. Falls outside the top 30 based on ESPN consensus, which is why I'm allowed to choose him here. But I love this matchup against Las Vegas. He's going to be my wide receiver. And at the tight end spot, David Njoku. I think that the young pup in Dylan Gabriel really unlocked a couple of things with the way they're doing so much 12 personnel in this offense. And I am going to run it back with him this week, knowing how good he looked last week, and hope that maybe David Njoku was unlocked by the quarterback change in Cleveland. So my starts of the week, Justin Fields, David Montgomery, Calvin Ridley, and David Njoku. Liz Loza, give me yours.
Well done. Well, I'm going to start at the quarterback position with Jordan Love. I was frankly shocked that the spread of 14.5 on this game against the Bengals did not move after the Joe Flacco news broke.
Right?
I'm hoping that is an error on Vegas's part, which is rare, but does happen, and which is what we try to exploit. But I think that Flacco is going to give the Bengals enough fight back to keep this game closer, and more importantly, for fantasy purposes, to keep Jordan Love throwing the ball. Obviously, Love's coming off of a loss and a tie, so 2 non-wins. There should be some motivation there. And I like this matchup because the last 2 quarterbacks to have faced Cincinnati, Bo Nix in week 4 and Jared Goff in week 5, have both cleared 20 fantasy points, putting Love in a low-end QB1, QB10 to QB12 range for me. At running back, give me Bill, JCM, Krosky Merritt versus my Bears. Last week, I thought we had a bit of a Bill breakout, if you will.
Yeah.
Krosky Merritt accounted for nearly 90% of the Commanders' running back rushing yards at the Chargers last week. He's had multiple red zone touches in 3 of his last 5 games. The Bears have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to opposing running backs, and Chicago has allowed over 15 fantasy points to a running back in 3 of their last 4 contests. It doesn't hurt that the Commanders are 4.5-point favorites, so game script should continue to go JCM's way. At wide receiver, we have the same guy, Calvin Ridley, someone I was very high on heading into the season. It's taken a minute for him to get going, both probably because of the rapport that he is building with a rookie quarterback, and the schedule has been really difficult. But as it started to soften last week, he converted 5 of 10 for 131 receiving yards. Now, I don't love that from an efficiency standpoint, but I do love that it is moving in the right direction. You mentioned the matchup against the Raiders. Absolutely gettable. I think we continue to see that positive momentum for Ridley in this one.
Love
Finally, at tight end, a guy I mentioned a couple of weeks ago before everybody was on him, Mason Taylor versus Denver. Now, I don't like the matchup. I am more worried about the Broncos defense, particularly in one of these international games, which can always get a little bit sideways. However, Mason Taylor's volume has kept him as a top 11 producer at the position in back-to-back weeks. He has a snap share of over 80% so far this season. He's also averaging 30 routes per game, which is the tight end 6 for that stat. I do think, again, that the matchup is going to be difficult, but when I dug a little bit deeper, featured tight ends like Tyler Warren in week 2 and Dallas Goedert in week 5 both posted double-digit fantasy points when facing the Broncos. So there is continued low-end tight end 1 appeal for Taylor in week 6.
I love Mason Taylor. I'm all in. Like it feels like we're starting to get a little bit of juice, right? Moving, like some momentum moving forward. And I think that, again, we're looking for any tight end that has a pulse right now. So it's like, if you're telling me you're giving me a little bit of something, I will buy the hope pretty easily before I let my heart get shattered. But I am big on Mason Taylor. Love that lineup.
We like to call that, Daniel, we like to call that hopium.
Hopium. I like it.
Hopium.
I am, well,
Getting hard.
Put it in my veins on Mason Taylor, the hopium that I am.
Oh, that's a little much.
Okay, sorry. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, you said it. You can't give me like those softballs then. We got a couple more starts of the week here from Field and Mike Clay. First one we're going to throw up on the screen here is going to be from Field Yates. Field has his quarterback going to be Jordan Love. His running back is Ken Walker III. Ken Walker III is outside the top 20? What? This feels like cheating. Doesn't this feel like cheating, Liz? Or is that just me?
It might just be you. I understand game script may not go this
he's
way.
running back 22.
Sure.
It was real close. Okay, so he's walking the line there. At wide receiver, Field knew that you and I were going to take Calvin Ridley, so he also had to take Calvin Ridley as well. And then at tight end, he went with Kyle Pitts, which, again, he's going to be watching that Darnell Mooney
Pitts,
conversation.
Interesting.
Yes, it is. So Jordan Love, Ken Walker III, Calvin Ridley, and Kyle Pitts. Mike Clay has decided to go with his starts of the week, went a different direction, and he's got Bo Nix at his quarterback, Chase Brown. He's flirting with the devil right there at the running back position. He also went with Calvin Ridley. Let's just throw the wide receiver position out. We all chose the same wide receiver this week. And then Travis Kelce as his tight end. Look at him. After a big week last week, maybe there's a thought that Travis Kelce continues things here in week 6 against my Detroit Lions. Do you think that Mike did that just because they play my Lions and it was like extra insult to injury?
No, I think that both Mike and Travis are just living the life of a showboy.
I
So
think
they got to
that's what it
show
is.
mutual love.
When I look at Mike, I think the term showboy for sure. Yes.
Nobody dances between the lightning strikes better, frankly.
Better. Yes. 100%. Absolutely. Man,
Sky is opalite for that guy.
Let's dive in. You bring so
All day
many
long.
big words to the table. I don't know how to react to all of them. I end up going home and I say to Rosie, like, Rosie, what were all the things that Liz said to me today? And she has to let me know, like, what happened, because I just don't. Listen, you and your Ivy League education. I went to Full Sail University. It is a different conversation down there, okay?
Okay.
So let's dive into, though, a couple of mailbag questions. Mailbag questions from our friends over at YouTube. Again, shout out to our buddy Eric Moody, who recently signed an extension to stay with us here at ESPN. Super pumped to be able to have him. All right, first question that we have coming from Sean. Sean wants to know, should I start Ramondre Stevenson or Alvin Kamara this week? Full PPR. Liz Loza, we talked about this the other day, how it felt like obviously Antonio Gibson going on IR. Touches have kind of been consolidated. Right now, at least it feels like, to Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson. I'm more in on the Ramondre Stevenson short-term conversation. Which direction would you go with this question, though?
I think I'm still going to lean to, interesting because these two teams are playing each other, right? Like these running backs are on opposing offenses this week. I would still, because of the floor and the receiving ability and the lack of fumbles, frankly, lean towards Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I've got Kamara as running back 21 and Stevenson as running back 27. I probably would do that as well, although I don't feel good. Obviously, this is why we're getting the question about either one of the options. Yeah. Neither one. Alvin Kamara has just been disappointing when you look at all the things that have happened with the Saints so far to start the season. He's not been the heavy pass catcher that we've known him to be in fantasy football to just propel a top 15 to 12 volume right now. So I would go with Kamara, though, as well, taking on the Patriots this week. Let's go with another question here from our mailbag. This one comes from Rolls. Rolls wants to know, Mason Taylor, Mark Andrews, and Brock Bauer, which one are you starting this week? Liz, if Brock Bauer is healthy, just period. If Brock Bauer is healthy, is there any way that you wouldn't start him? Would you be like, oh, I don't know if he's healthy enough. Maybe I'd rather go another direction. Or if he's on the field, is he in your lineup? Period. End of sentence.
I think if Brock Bowers is on the field, then I am starting him. No questions asked. Also, the Raiders have to do something, right? Like, if Brock Bowers is on the field, the team has to utilize him given their record. And if he is not, I hope it's because they're shelving him so he is healthy and they don't ruin him in the attempts of just trying to get a fast win. But yes, I'm going to assume that if he is on the field, he is meant to be on the field, and I'm not going to preoccupy myself with any Michael Mayer decoy tight end 2 situations.
Correct.
Just going to do the thing, simplify it.
So I would start Brock Bowers for those other two, Mason Taylor or Mark Andrews. I actually would rather play Mason Taylor. If
Agreed.
I felt like
I have them
Lamar,
very close in my rankings.
Me too. I have them, and they're basically back to back. But if I have to choose between what I feel like is people that are not shadowed by Pat Surtain get to be the a nice secondary piece within those offenses so far this year facing the Denver Broncos. So I would rather have that than Cooper Rush throwing passes to Mark Andrews against the Rams defense.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
Let's do one more. We're going to do one more question here. And this question from our YouTube chat comes from Matthew. Wants to know, should I put Romeo Dobbs or Zach Charbonnet in my flex this week?
Oh, this is a good one. This is a stumper.
This is like a 12-team flex question is what it sounds like to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It'd be tough for me to play. I think it'd be tough for me to play Zach Charbonnet over Romeo Dobbs.
I disagree.
You think you'd go Charbonnet? Charbonnet,
I think I go Charbonnet because of the goal line exposure. Yes, Charbonnet is a touchdown-dependent flex, but also he's been finding the end zone regularly. And we talked earlier in the show about how Matthew Golden could be an option, how Dontavian Wicks. And yes, the matchup is delectable, and Romeo Dobbs has led the offense in the receiving core thus far, but Tucker Kraft is obviously in that mix as well. So for me, I would like the surest thing to 6 points that I can get, and that's going to be Charbonnet.
Yeah. I think you just had me at the Bengals. I think maybe that's why, I just look at the matchup and I just think to myself that it's mind you, though, we're playing, and I think I said this last week or the week before, Packers just play wide receiver roulette. Last week was Romeo Dobbs. This week it could be somebody different. I get the thought process, especially if anything happens. This is one of those scenarios where if something happens to a player in front of Romeo Dobbs, there could still be 3 other players that are going to benefit. If something happens to the player in front of Zach Charbonnet, Charbonnet immediately vaults into a top fantasy option for us for the rest of that game. So I get the thought process. I think it's a coin flip. I could be good. You know what, Liz? If you want to go with Zach Charbonnet, I'm going to back you, and I'm also going to go with Zach Charbonnet.
That was so easy. I wish you would take lessons from my husband. That was great.
You know what? Or no, the other way around. The other way around. Your husband needs to take lessons from me. Thank you.
Yes. Somebody clip that out and send it to
And
my
send it.
husband, please.
That was so good. Liz, thank you for hanging out with us. Please, if you don't mind, before we close out the show, can you tell all the good people, all the things that you're doing and places that they can find you, just in case that they have not seen Facts versus Feelings, which if they haven't, it's just a travesty. Make sure that you would check it out.
I will be happy to. Thank you so much. And also, Focus listeners are the best. I've been at other places, right? And Focus listeners are the most engaging. And I'm not just trying to butter you up, but also the kindest. And I really love being a part of this community. And I love coming on this show and engaging with everybody in the, in the chat and elsewhere. But if you would like to engage with me further, you can follow me on social at Liz Loza _FF. And you can read my column, Facts versus Feelings, on the .com every Wednesday. And you can either watch on YouTube or listen to the Facts versus Feelings pod, which usually posts in the morning on Thursdays. So Wednesday column, Thursday show, and social every day at Liz Loza _FF.
And come check us out on Sundays on ESPN2 from 10 a.m. Eastern to 1 p.m., where we have a huge breakdown of all the games. And Liz obviously joins us there as well every single week on Sunday for that. Liz, it is so great to see you. Today's show was presented by Little Caesars. Shout out to Little Caesars and our friends over at Pizza Pizza. Liz, that's going to do it for us today. I'm going to close this out like I normally do. But if you have anything else that you want to add, please jump in. But don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself today. You deserve it. We love you guys. Enjoy your weekend. And we'll see you on Sunday on Fantasy Football Now. See ya.
Fantasy, you're in the 06